You tap the screen. The ride is yours. A cheerful message says you're the boss. But the real answer is far stranger. It starts with the dusty saddle. A young man bought it on credit in 1875. He was told he was free. He was told he was a cowboy. And he believed it. The truth about the cowboy's freedom is not what you learned in school. It was a debt trap. It was a carefully crafted myth. And that same myth might be holding your attention right now. So look back. Look at the cattle trail, not the movie cowboys, the real ones. They were wage laborers for the largest corporations of their day. The cattle industry after the Civil War was a massive commercial enterprise. It was bankrolled by Eastern and European investors. They bought huge tracts of land. They shipped beef to cities on the new railroads, and they needed men to drive the herds. Those men were cowboys. The historian Patricia Nelson Limerick once wrote that the cowboy was not a rugged individualist. He was a low-level employee in a complex, industrialized system. Think of him as a warehouse worker with a horse. His pay was meager. In the 1870s, a cowboy earned around $30 a month, but he rarely kept that full amount because he had to pay for his own gear, his saddle, his boots, his bedroll, even his horse. A good saddle cost $50 or more. A reliable horse could cost over $100. That was months of his salary. So he borrowed from his employer or from the company store. The ranch commissary sold supplies at inflated prices and charged interest. By the time payday arrived at the end of a cattle drive, the cowboy was often deep in debt. He had to work another season just to break even. Does that sound familiar? Yet every dime novel and every Wild West show told a different story. They sold you a hero, a solitary rider against the horizon. No boss, just a man and his horse. But look closer. The cowboy had a boss. He worked for the brand. Literally. The brand on the steer was the owner's mark, not his. He was just the driver. And if he complained, he was fired. In 1883, cowboys in the Texas Panhandle tried something shocking. They went on strike. They demanded higher wages. They wanted to go from $30 a month to $50. They organized. They carried signs. And the ranch owners fired every one of them. They blacklisted the strikers. The cattle industry treated them as replaceable parts. Their freedom ended the moment they asked for a raise. So, how did the cowboy become the symbol of independence? It was a marketing campaign. The railroads and beef companies wanted to sell more tickets and more beef. They invented a romance. Buffalo Bill's Wild West show toured the world with thrilling stunts. It showed cowboys as daring knights. But the real cowboys in the show were just performers on a salary. They earned less than the stars. The historian Richard White argued that the cowboy myth was a tool of corporate expansion. It painted the West as a land of opportunity, not a landscape of exploited labor. That idea stuck. It became America's origin story. But it was a false belief. Now look at your phone. Tap the app. You're told you're an entrepreneur, your own boss. Set your own hours. Work when you want. It's the same seductive pitch, and it works on the same psychology. You feel free. You feel in control. But what is actually happening? An economist named Lawrence Michel studied rideshare drivers. He found that after expenses, you could earn less than the minimum wage. You pay for the vehicle, the fuel, the repairs, the insurance. The platform takes a commission, sets the price, and can deactivate you at any moment. You bear all the risk, just like the cowboy with his saddle. The app is the new company store. It sells you the tools you need to work and deducts the cost from your earnings. The cowboy borrowed to buy a horse. You might be borrowing to buy a car or renting one through the platform. You might be financing an electric bike. You pay daily rental fees. You risk accidents with no health coverage because you are an independent contractor, not an employee. The word employee would require benefits, so they don't use it. They call you a partner, a hero, an adventurer. But the boss is the algorithm. It watches your every move. It nudges you towards certain rides. It determines your rating. If you don't comply, you disappear from the app. Your freedom is a set of choices inside a cage. You can choose which hour to work, but you cannot set the rate. You can choose which gig to accept, but you cannot bargain. That's not freedom. That's piecework. A researcher named Louis Hyman wrote about the long history of temporary work. He traced how companies shifted risk onto workers. Since the 1970s, the idea of the employee has been eroded. Now we have the gig. And the gig looks a lot like the cattle drive, short term, dangerous, with no safety net. The cowboy myth had a purpose. It made exploitation feel honorable. It let a ranch owner pay a man nothing and call him a free rider. Today's apps use the same language. They tell you to hustle. They celebrate your independence. But after you subtract the wear on your bike, the late night stress, the missing sick pay, whose independence is it really? The owners, the investors, not yours. There's another layer. The cowboy myth erased the fact that up to a third of real hands were African American, Mexican, or Native American. The mythology made them white heroes. It was a selective story designed to sell a certain version of freedom. The gig economy does something similar. It sells a glamorous image of hustle culture. Early ads showed smiling riders on sunny streets. They didn't show you working in freezing rain with numb fingers or unable to afford a doctor. Now imagine you're a delivery driver. It's 10 at night. Your bike gets a flat tire. You have no insurance. You call the platform. They tell you you're an independent contractor. Your problem. Now imagine a cowboy in 1880, the same scenario. His horse goes lame on the trail. The foreman says, "It's your horse. You fix it." That's the same trap, the same lie. You've been sold a story of freedom that conveniently leaves out the costs. The cowboy's saddle was his debt. Your phone is your debt. And the promise of being your own boss is what keeps you accepting the risks. So ask the uncomfortable question. Whose freedom is it really? The cowboy gave his labor for a wage he never fully kept. The modern gig worker gives their time for a cut of a fare that someone else sets. The screen says you're a boss, but bosses own the means of production. Set the price, capture the profit. Do you? The cowboy never did. He looked at the horizon and felt free, but his feet were tied by credit, just like yours might be now. The myth persists because it's a beautiful story, but it's just a story. And stories can be rewritten. You tap the screen. The ride is yours. The message chimes. You're your own boss. But look at the saddle in your pocket. Now you know where that line comes from. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel. A new story every week.